Step a little closer now, don't you hear the ground? Every story's waiting to be pulled back out. Glass and secrets buried deep, truths that never sleep. Follow where the silence goes down the dark we keep.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hey everyone, I'm Wendy. Welcome back to Diggin, Diaries with Wendigo. On this channel, we focus on bottle digging, metal detecting, and the stories that are buried with it. If this is something that you're interested in, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Once I hit 500 subscribers, I'll be doing my very own giveaway live on this channel. Today's story, we'll be talking about one of the darkest pieces in local history, told in the words by the man himself. Now, let's dive into the diary.
Viewer discretion advised. This video discusses real crimes involving violence and murder. Content is presented for educational and historical purposes only. You've been warned.
I was born on the second day, May 1801, in Dauphin County, state of Pennsylvania. My father's name was John Young, a respectable farmer of Dutch descent, though I think born in America. He was of the religious order commonly known in this country by the appellation of Dunkards. My mother's name before her marriage was Sarah Heller, also of German descent. My father and mother had 9 children, 5 daughters and 4 sons. My 3 brothers are still living as far as I can tell, 2 of them in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania by the name of Samuel and Benjamin, and 1 in the state of Ohio whose name is Jonathan. All farmers by occupation and believed are considered honest, respectable men. My father died in the year 1822 and my mother in 1820. I think they were both about 60 years of age at the time of their death. I think I was sent to school while young, about 12 months in all, to 5 different teachers. The names of 3 of my teachers I remember were Jacob Seiler, Obadiah Jennings, and John Hay. The other 2 I have forgotten. I learned to read and write, ciphered twice through Pike's arithmetic, and worked some in other authors. I never took much delight in writing and consequently wrote a poor hand. I was fond of figures and always considered myself a ready calculator. After the death of my father, at which time I was about 13 years old, I lived with my oldest brother Emmanuel and my mother, who lived together until I was about 19 years old. My manner of life until that time had been guiltless, as far as I can recollect, with the exception of occasionally disobeying my parents' commands by indulging in playing ball, fishing, and shooting on Sundays, for which I was often reproved and sometimes chastised. I also, about the age of 17 or 18, contracted a habit of profane swearing to a considerable extent. I was never a habitual drinker of ardent spirits. I recollect once, when a small boy, of becoming intoxicated, and once as I came to this country. With these exceptions, my life has been temperate in that respect. My brother Emmanuel, with whom I lived, and my brother Jonathan, who I have stated lived in Ohio, are members of the society called the United Brethren. My brother Benjamin of the Lutheran Church.
Isaac starts off by telling us exactly who he wants us to see. A man raised by faith, in a respectable family, and believes he lives a moral life. Now this is important because old confessions aren't about truth. They're about shaping your memory. And what makes this so unsettling is how normal it sounds. Nothing feels extreme yet, which is often how these stories begin. Quiet, ordinary, and completely unaware of what is coming.
In the summer of 1820, while living with my brother Emmanuel, one night I went up to bed and soon fell asleep, and in a short time was suddenly waked up by a noise, as I thought, in the garret above me. I was extremely alarmed and lay for some time almost petrified with terror, believing it to be the devil. At length, a young man whom my brother had hired by the name of Jacob Rufus came up to bed. He was a religious young man, and I observed to him that I wished I was as good as he was. I could not sleep that night. For 2 years after that, I was frequently alarmed in my sleep. At all times, when frightened in this way, my impression was that it was the devil which was tormenting me. About 2 weeks after my first fright, I went to hear a Presbyterian by the name of Wintriner preach. He was a very warm and zealous preacher. This discourse had a strong impression on my mind, and from that time I was inclined to be religious. I was from that time frequently exercised in prayer. My brother and all the adult members of his family every evening joined in social meeting, each prayer on their turn. In about 2 years after my first serious impressions, I joined the church of the said Wintriner, who had at that time withdrawn himself from the Presbyterians and established an independent society. He was in habit of preaching both in the English and German languages. When I joined the Weinbrenner Society, I was baptized by immersion. I was about 3 years in that society, during which time I believed I was a Christian, although I was during that time subject to gusts of passion, and at such times subject to swear very profanely. These passions, however, did not often occur, but whenever they did, I would invariably forsake my religious exercises for a time, and would then again come forward to the mourner's bench to be prayed for and confess my sins, and engage in religious exercise as usual. During the whole time I belonged to this society, I was a slave of those harassing fears at night, believing that I was continually pursued and watched by the devil. So terrified was my imagination that sometimes I would become frightened at my own shadow in the broad light of day. Notwithstanding all these fears, I believed that I was endowed with the gift of prophecy, and that I was far superior to ordinary Christians.
This is where the fear takes hold. He's no longer just anxious, he is terrified. Night after night, he believes something evil is following him. This kind of fear changes how someone sleeps, thinks, and acts. And what really breaks my heart, in this time period, fear was not treated like illness. It was treated like a spiritual struggle, something to prey on. And instead of help, he was left alone with it.
One night, coming from a camp meeting by myself, I saw something as I thought in the form of a hog coming very fast towards the meeting. I thought it was the devil, and concluded he must have some advocates there. This alarmed me terribly. When I got home, my fears would not permit me to sleep. I was at this time residing at Mr. John McCammon's, a tavern keeper in Middletown, a village about 3 miles from my brother's, where I had formerly lived. I left my brother when about 19 and lived with Mr. McCammon most of my time for about 3 years. During the whole time I professed religion, I was afraid to sleep alone, and even when other persons were sleeping in the same room with me in different beds, I could not rest. I have many times, rather than lay alone, got up and gone to bed with black persons, and prefer getting up and walking about out of the doors with a club in my hand to lying in a room by myself. A part of this period of my life, perhaps for something more than 1 year, I was in a habit of appointing meetings in the neighborhood and trying to preach to the people, believing it to be my duty to do so. While making this profession and exposition of religion, I universally felt proud and high-minded, and looked upon those who I considered less religious than myself with great contempt. When I attended the experience or class meetings, I universally concealed my fears of the devil from my brothers in the church, lest they would doubt the reality of my religion.
Fear and pride are living together here. He's terrified, but he also believes he is chosen, better than others, and that combination is dangerous, and it isolates him. This keeps him from admitting that something is wrong, and this is where the people around him would see devotion and not delusion. But inside, his world is shrinking, becoming darker and harder for anyone to reach.
When I left Mr. McCammon's, I went to live with my brother Benjamin. My object in getting there was to induce him and his wife to join the church to which I belonged, they both being members of the Lutheran Church. This I believed to be my duty, and I further believed it would be an honor to proselyte an elder brother and his wife. Shortly after I went to live with him, I professed satisfaction. I believed myself sanctified throughout both soul and body. I was at that time acquainted with but one person only, whom I thought, or who professed to have attained the same degree of perfection I had. This was a female of respectability in the neighborhood, and who was a member of the same society I was. I frequently called to see her, and we had much conversation on the subject, and spoke of our superior attainments over our brothers and sisters in the church. About that time, there was a considerable division in the church between those of us who had attained, as we believed, sanctification, and those who did not profess that attainment. I therefore took it upon myself to visit the families of our society and urge upon them that they must obtain sanctification, and finally they must be lost. A day or two before I committed the enormous crime that I am about to relate in the state of Pennsylvania, I felt constrained to travel throughout the world, as I thought, from house to house, and exhort and entreat the people to attend to their future welfare. I therefore left my brother Benjamin with that intention, refusing to take with me any money to bear my expenses or any other preparations, though my brother urged me to take money from him for that purpose. Yet I steadily refused, bearing in mind the instructions of our Savior to his apostles when he sent them forth into the world to preach the gospel, that they should take with them neither purse nor script. I therefore commenced my operations in my own neighborhood, going from place to place, urging upon all necessity and sanctification, and anxiously inquiring to find those who had attained it, as I verily thought I had, and declaring to all that the world was shortly to come to an end, as I then verily believed, believing myself a prophet.
Here he crosses a line that is hard to come back from. He doesn't just believe in God. He believes in something much bigger, sanctified, perfect, chosen. He believes he is chosen to correct others. And when someone believes that strongly, they stop listening. They stop questioning themselves. To him, this felt like purpose. But in reality, it was a complete step away from reality and into a spiraling tragedy.
During my last visit, I alarmed many persons with my predictions, and left them weeping and thanking God that I had given them timely warning of the pending calamity. Towards the evening of the fourth day's travel, it commenced raining very hard. I called at a house which I was near, and commenced exhorting the family as I had others. They, however, did not seem so ready to believe me, and warned me to examine myself, lest I might be laboring under a delusion. It continued to rain towards night, during which time I became discouraged, and accordingly that same evening returned to my brother Benjamin's, feeling very ashamed of myself, as I had left there in the morning, expecting to have traversed the world before I returned. On the following day, I went to plowing for my brother, concluding I would compose my mind and go to work. I was very tired in the evening, and although afraid to go to bed alone as usual, yet my fatigue urged, and I went upstairs to bed earlier than usual. When I went upstairs to bed, I kneeled down and prayed, but my heart seemed hard, and my prayers seemed to me but an empty sound.
Now this moment feels very human. He fails. He questions himself, and for a brief second, doubt breaks through. But instead of getting help, he tries to work harder, pray harder, fix himself. That empty feeling he describes is important. It is exhaustion. It is someone running out of strength while pretending that everything is fine.
I laid down and fell asleep, but shortly awoke and heard, as I thought, some person open the door at the foot of the stairs and walk heavily up. and opened the door of my room. I then shut the door and placed myself against it. I was exceedingly alarmed and cried out, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand." I turned myself in the bed with my eyes towards the door. I came to the conclusion that it was the beast spoken of in the Revelations with 7 heads and 10 horns, and that I was compelled to fight with and conquer it. I lay for some time, I thought, reasoning with it, during which time I thought I was eating the little book spoken of by the angel, which was sweet to the mouth, but in the belly bitter, which seemed to throw me into the most profuse sweat. I began to feel exasperated, and suddenly sprang from the bed to the door and commenced striking violently, as though I had encountered the enemy my imagination had depicted. When I found the monster had eluded my grasp, and that I was striking the door, it appeared to me that I was forcibly impelled to a bed in my room, where a little orphan girl, which belonged to my brother's family, was sleeping, about 8 or 9 years old. I immediately fell to beating the unoffending creature on the head with my fist. The noise I made and the shrieks of the little sufferer brought my brother and his wife into the room. They immediately rescued her and took her downstairs to their own bedroom. I then became much incensed at my brother and his wife, considering he ran through the house and closed the door. He ran from room to room in the house, closing the doors as he ran. I followed up, breaking them open, and in this part of the evidence of Mr. Benjamin Fosdick in relation to my confession of this crime previously to the murder of my family, he was, to the best of my recollection, mistaken. Although I believe he related the truth to the very best of his knowledge, I am confident that I related this fact to him as I have now, and that I did not tell him I pursued my brother and broke down the doors with an axe, but with a club of wood. At length I came to a room where they kept the cupboardware, in which there were looking glasses. I broke them to pieces with my club, and followed on to the bedroom, but found that my brother and his wife and infant child had escaped through the window, which was the only way they could have effected it, as there was no door leading out of the room. When I found my brother and his wife gone, I searched the cradle for the infant, intending to kill it. While thus engaged, I heard a groan under the bed. It was the unfortunate little girl I had beaten upstairs. I got on my knees and commenced to beating her with my club. It still moaned. I then went upstairs and got my pantaloons, came down with them in my hand, took my knife out of my pocket, and dragged the child from under the bed and cut its head off. This little girl my brother had obtained from the poorhouse. Her name was Catherine McElroy.
Make sure to like and subscribe.